So let's get started. Firstly, I'm excited to welcome everyone to Curiosity's third Customer and Partner Product Update webinar of 2023. It's my pleasure to introduce two of my colleagues and today's speakers. First, James Walker, Curiosity's Chief Technology Officer. Today, James will showcase an overview of recent updates and new features added to Test Modeler. Huw Price, Managing Director of Curiosity, is also here. Huw is here to talk today about test data automation and answer any test data related questions you may have. Thank you for joining and presenting today. Okay, so before we get going with all the updates, I'd just like to give a quick overview of our product update webinars. The key objective of our product update webinars is to keep you, the users, informed and up to date about all the great stuff our developers are doing. This in turn will hopefully help you get the most out of our software, the chance to talk directly to our developers and other users. Our community of users are extremely important to us, and we want everyone to learn from each other. And we believe our product update webinars are the right place for exactly that. Therefore, I want to encourage you to leave questions, talk in the chat, and invite your colleagues who might be interested to future updates. Additionally, this will help us shape the future of our products, keep them user-centric, and make sure we are on the right track. We hope you enjoyed this update, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so please get in touch after the product update. Okay, so now I'd like to hand over to James, who's going to provide updates on Test Modeler. Go ahead, James.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mantas. Right, let me jump in and share my screen.
Go ahead.
Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so hopefully this is coming through with the PowerPoint one. Good. Okay, so I'm going to be giving our update for Test Modeler and some of the new features which have come out. I also want to give a bit of a glimpse at the end into some of the work which is coming through, which we'll definitely be looking for some feedback on to help us kind of drive some of the development. The first feature I want to talk about is quite a hot topic at the moment. It's around generative AI, and we've obviously been incorporating that into Test Modeler and looking how we can use the technology to help to accelerate driving quality and creating assets within Modeler itself. We're actually working with a financial institution at the moment who have a lot of requirements documents in different PDFs, different Word documents, and basically they're leveraging our integration to be able to go out, pull in different documents, different requirements they have, pass them through our AI engine, and be able to use that to move into the world of modeling and help them create models. So I'm going to start off just by giving you a glimpse into some of that, what it entails, and hopefully give you a bit of insight. So I'm inside Modeler here, and if we go to the import screen and we go to our Model GPT window, what this basically allows us to do
James, we're just saying you're
showing the slides.
Yeah. Sorry, let me try again. I'll select window. Here we go. Switch between entire screen. Share. Okay, hopefully that's better.
Yeah, coming through.
Yeah, so basically what we have is a little dialogue here. And what this allows us to do is to put in requirements of things models for. So here we have a little specification for a drinks promotion. There's lots of examples of here out the box, so you can just plug in. But this one is saying that someone has to run a minimum of 10 miles per week to qualify for a free drink. They present their results to the cashier to receive the promotion. They must be over 18 years old. There's selected drinks. There's a limited time period it's acceptable for. So we have basically a paragraph here which has some hidden business rules inside of when this drinks promotion is valid and when it isn't. Now, what we can do is we can hit the generate button, and what that will basically do is take this textual representation we have. And if you remember earlier, I was talking about this being potentially, from requirements documents. And here, what this has done is it's split this out and it's created a model for us, which dictates when the customer is eligible for the promotion and when they're not eligible for the promotion. And obviously, everything in between here is all of those rules that lived inside that particular requirement. So is the customer tracking their miles? Are they running at least 10 miles per week? Have they presented their results to the cashier? Is the promotion valid? Are they over 18 years old, etc., etc.? So I think this highlights pretty well the benefit of, modeling over textual requirements, but also it now shows the power that you can take these requirements, you can move into the world of modeling, generating your test cases, pushing them into your external test case management tools, and moving into kind of the whole modeling journey from there. The other one I want to show you quickly is something that we're calling Copilot. We're still working on this a little bit at the moment, so the UI is going to improve. But basically, this is a little side panel that allows you to take your existing models and start to either interrogate them, start to go out and say, go and augment my model, go and generate some new blocks and new edges in here for new logic that's appeared. Or what we can do is we can use it to go and take an existing model and do something with it. So I'm going to click the review button here. And what that is going to do is it's going to take my model. And basically, it's trying to go away, understand this flowchart, this model we have, and interpret the logic and provide suggestions in terms of missing scenarios or ways that this model could be improved. And one of the ones that's come back with here, which you'll read, it seems to be missing a case where if the username or password are invalid, the user will be not able to log in. So there's lots and lots of different accelerators in here. Basically, we're applying generative AI. We're looking at how we can implement that technology to obviously help with creating models. But then also, once you've got these models, you can use it to go away and start to interrogate them or enhance them. The final one I just want to finish up on is, if you think about what we're doing in Modeler and everything we have, we're connecting to lots and lots of different backend systems. It could be Jira, it could be, your test case management tool. Obviously, you're generating models within Modeler itself, which, have business rules embedded inside of them. What we've basically done is we've added in a capability which sits on top of the whole workspace. And what that allows you to do is to go through and start to cast queries and ask questions about the different assets which exist within that workspace. So here I've gone off and I've posed a query. What is Jira ticket CB13? Not terribly exciting, but it's come back and it's given me a response of what this Jira ticket represents. Now, the power here is we can go much, much deeper and we can ask more sophisticated questions. So here I'm asking a question, when can a customer apply for a credit card? I've got different models and different Jira tickets assigned to this workspace relevant to the project I'm working on. And this has basically come back with an answer saying, we've looked at 2 user stories, CB13 and CB10. We've also looked at a flowchart for applying for a credit card. And basically, it's come back with these constraints, the different business logic which exist for when someone should be able to apply for a credit card and when they can't. So this is thinking about, how can we gain understanding over the assets we have in our software development lifecycle? How can we start to pay off technical debt, to go through different sources of knowledge we have, and being able to tie everything together. So that's one angle that we've been working on. The other feature that I want to cover is some of the API enhancements that we've added to our QuickStart framework. So we have quite a few users who are using Test Modeler for their API testing. We've also got quite a few customers who have been using technologies like Postman or SOA Test. And if you look at the constraints in those technologies, it's very hard to chain together API calls. Obviously, you don't have the benefits of having all the test data routines in the background to go and find and make data. So we've had quite a few customers start to use us for their API testing and being able to model out all the different kind of journeys that exist behind an API endpoint. So we've had this API capability for quite a while, but what we've done is we've basically added in a lot of extensions to really flesh it out and build a lot more functionality on top of it. And if you come over to our learning portal, what you'll see is that we have a specific training pathway for API testing where you can get started. We've also got different tutorials in here for how to get started with API testing. importing Swagger, importing existing Postman collections, SOAP UI collections. But then we've got lots and lots of goodness for in here over advanced API testing. So things like handling cookies, being able to extract multiple values from a response, being able to chain API calls together, being able to go in and test SOAP APIs, going in and be able to test GraphQL APIs, dynamic JSON payloads, for instance. Okay, so there's lots and lots of different articles which cover, more advanced API testing, which is kind of lacking in other tools out there. One of the pieces I want to focus on is around being able to track cookies, which has been coming up quite a lot with our customers who are using us for API testing. If I just enter an endpoint in here, so we're going to hit the google.com endpoint, we're going to perform a get. If I run this, what we'll get back is all the HTML that comes back from Google. You'll see we've got the different headers that come back, the responses that come back, and also we're now tracking all the cookies that come back as well. So we can save this, that's fine. We've also just added a button in here which allows us to directly create a model from a function that has been created. So here we can click the create model button. What that is going to do is go away and create a model from our function we have. If we come in here and open that up, what we'll see is that we have a linear model that comes through initially. So we start, we call our particular function that we want, and then we go through end. And what that gives us is a good little skeleton that we can come in and we can start to add in our different conditional logic and start to flesh out this model with all the different scenarios that we want to cover. But then obviously once we're ready, we can go and generate our paths, we can go and run them, and then we can track everything that's come through as part of that API automation we've created and executed. Okay, so there's lots and lots of functionality we've added in for being able to do API testing. Strongly recommend looking at these learning pathways we've added in and taking a look so you can explore how you can fully leverage this capability that we've added in. The final one I want to finish up on is, we're heavily investing in kind of rebranding, refocusing the UI of Modeler to make it a lot more user-friendly. We've been taking on a lot of our users' feedback that they want a more, streamlined user interface. We've also been looking at a lot of other tools out there, which specifically focus more on the design side, like Miro, Figma, etc. So one of the bits that we've added in is the capability to be able to go through and essentially go through your project, navigate through it. You can find the different automation actions, all the different test data activities you have, and you can basically come in and you can start to drag and drop components and connect them together as you go through. Now, the other bit that's going to be coming in the next couple of months is basically we've been working on a whole new redesign of Modeler. And what you'll see here is basically, the redesign. So we've got, lots of collapsible widgets in here, lots of different things that exist. It's all drag and drop from the get-go. Again, we've got collapsible tabs on the right-hand side for going through things like node properties, etc. So we're really trying to invest heavily in redesigning the UI, providing a much more streamlined user experience. And as I say, that's going to be hitting most people's releases in the next month or two, we expect. So, this is just a glimpse of some of the stuff we've been doing. As I always say, the release notes is the best place to keep up to date with all the latest activities and all the different features that are coming out. So if you want to learn more about some of the new features, recommend you go and take a look over there. Otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Huw, who's going to go through the test data. Huw, are you good?
I'm good, yeah. You need to, yeah, just share screen.
Perfect.
Select window screen, entire screen. That's the secret. There we go. Okay, so should see a PowerPoint floating about.
Yes.
Yep. Good. All right, so let's have a look. Okie doke. Okay, you can't have testing without test data. There we go. Okay, so This is basically TDA machine learning. I'm not sure if I talked about it before, where we've sort of expanded a little bit, so I'll probably just do a little bit extra on this. And this is looking to scan data, looking for relationships using machine learning. And what we're actually doing is scanning the data now. Previously, we would do a little bit of that, but now we're actually using a machine learning algorithm, which is much more sophisticated to be able to go and do that. When would you use it? Basically, trying to discover data relationships automatically. There's a lot of technical data out there, and anything that's going to help you, discover relationships inside databases, which generally have, a few foreign keys, but there's lots of implied business rules that are maintained by the application, and they manifest themselves as data relationships, and basically speeding up data understanding to pay off your technical debt. So let's just have a quick look at that. So if we have a quick glance at what that looks like. So if you go and look at one of our validation activities, which basically as soon as you've pretty much registered anything, I would encourage you to go and have a little play around with this. There's lots of things in there. So once you've established these relationships, you could then, and you're happy with them, you could actually validate your databases, and you will generally find that you have what we call soft keys, and they will discover you have some bad data in there, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It might be some historical data, but at least you know about it. But this one here, look for new potential relationships. If we just have a little run of this one and click execute, you choose the tables. Currently, that's just one source at a time. We're just in the process of switching that, so you can do multiple data sources and maybe merge in messages or different database types within the same scan. Now, what'll come up now, this is the stuff where we're using naming standards, which actually are a pretty good way of being able to track down our relationships. Most people are, they call things, unless you've got everything just called ID, it's a bit, we can make it a bit harder. So if you go, let's just go find that, and we fire this off. Now, what we're going to do is scan data. 5,000 is usually pretty good to be able to do that. If you've got a little bit more time, you can sort of whack it up into the hundreds of thousands, and then you'll get a more accurate scan of the data. So if we just fire that job off, now that will take a few minutes to run, and I'll just kind of show you what's kind of happening in the background. So if we have a look here, so we will go through and we are scanning all the tables, and we create what we call a serialized view. And if we just have a look at that, a serialized view, just close that down for a minute and come and have a look at the JSON viewer, you'll see that we've got a column analysis of all of the columns. And we're capturing all sorts of information here, sums, means, medians, etc., etc. We'll also actually build you, which can be used later on for synthetic generation, a kind of default function. To actually generate the data, if you want to just use it as a straight data generation. Here, this one, we've set it up as a pick list from a CSV. Now, the other interesting thing is to create what we call hypergroup summaries, and this is basically what we're doing is creating it's a multi-dimensional analysis. It's a multivariate analysis that we're performing. So if we go and look at the various different columns, you've got the various group summaries that we're tracking, and then within that we've got various values. Like so. Now that basically allows us later on to come in and synthesize data. Now, however, in this case, what we're doing is we're using it to see if we can find potential relationships. So we've scanned lots of data here, and inside our database, based on the data that we've discovered, there is we basically have give you a percentage chance of this being chip. Okay, so here you've got, these are pretty lows. This is about 10%. It might be worth having a look at, and this may be, you're using a last name. Is actually with the same within the contacts database as the employees database, which is probably not a bad guess. Now, it's not specifically, a relationship that's going to improve integrity, but it's certainly something in terms of being able to kind of fully understand what's going on with the data. So in effect, we're using the machine learning, and then we've put kind of a wrapper layer on the top, which then gives us this ability to the decisions. And what you could do is go through this. You could then prune this down a little bit, and if you go back to this one and you say run database validation, you could then actually maybe run it on one of your larger databases, and you could say, I'm going to run my database validation, but I'm going to actually, instead of running it, instead of in effect importing those rules as soft keys into Modeler, you could actually just use that file that we've generated, and it would use the file to validate that against your data. And that's kind of like another way of validating that the relationships are good or bad. And again, if you think about that, that's a good way of sort of having a look at a database, having a look at maybe mesh streams, and slowly building up your understanding without having to do kind of, you know, too much hard work yourself, and letting kind of machine learning do a lot of the work for you. Now, moving on a little bit. So, okay, so this is basically that. Allow select to colonize, override the columns and function parameters, the ability to publish messages. Okay, now what we've also done now is when we go back to our data gen AI activity, which is in effect the same technology that we were using to discover those relationships. If we have a look over here, so what we've done is we've scanned a ton of credit. This is company credit messages. We've scanned a load of them, and what we've done then is we've, sorry, let me just move this out of the way. We've actually scanned all the messages, and we've produced a similar type of analysis of the data inside here. Again, so you've got ins and maximums, etc., standard deviations, and all sorts of discrete values, as well as multivariate analysis, which is what's going on here. Now, normally what you can do then is just say, well, what I'd like to do is to generate some data, and that will basically generate you, lots of data based on that SER file. And now what we've done is allowed you to, in effect, attach a template. Now, a template, if you understand it here, this basically is our ability. We've converted a message structure into a template. That template can then be used to generate messages. Let's just call it new demo. Can't spell my own name. How many messages do you want? If you want 100,000, we could create 100,000 messages. Let's do 10,000, 1,000 for now. Click on execute. And what this will do is it's kind of a merger of the ability to generate the variations of the data. And if we go and have a look at what's going on in the back here, so we will have created our driver, and our driver looks something like this. And you'll see here, these are the dimensionalities that we were looking at. These are the things that we actually care about in terms of the dimensions. And then once we get into it, these values maintain the same relationships between them. So you will get very, very similar data patterns based upon the multivariate analysis that's going on. But in addition to that, that will also generate you lots and lots of messages out of that. So it's a very quick way of being able to scan a set of messages. And if we go back to the slide, you will see generate messages based on a machine learning scan, rapidly create high volume similar pattern data. And this is a really key one. It removes production data. The data that's coming out has this exactly the same characteristics. You'll have similar means, maximum, standard deviations, etc. It will also, have the same level of kind of black swans in there as well. And it will create the data with similar patterns. So it's a very, we've just basically tied together three pieces of technology. One is the scanning. The other one is the generation of the multivariate variations of parameters, and then we've just attached that then to our message templates, and then you can generate lots of messages with those similar patterns as well. So, if you're thinking of testing, I don't know, a payment system, and you say, well, I need to throw, 1 million payment messages at it with similar patterns to production, then in effect you can basically just scan 10,000 of them and create 1 million on demand within a few minutes, and then push that into your systems. Okay. Okay, now the next one is, over the next, this is coming out in the next release, which will be sort of, well, it's basically in the current release that's being shipped, but we're going to put a lot more effort on this, so it's going to be much more drag and drop. And the idea there is to turn Modeler more into a data design tool. So the ability to generate complex sets of data. If you guys are familiar with the data gen, you can do, it's very, very powerful, the type of data you can generate. But once you start getting into one-to-many type relationships, you need to be a bit too sort of deep techie to be able to understand that and put that in one single generate. So the idea would be to actually use the modeler to actually design the data that you're interested in. So the other thing then is, because we can also then use it across multiple technologies, we can look up data from back-end systems, for example, but maybe the target system, we want to pull in some reference brokers or something like that. And we can just do that using our standard list technology, which populate a list, which would then be used. But we could also then generate data into 2 or 3 different technologies. We might want to create some Kafka messages, which go along with some data we're putting into our payment system or something like that directly. And obviously, why would you want to do that? You want faster and better data. So let me just quickly kind of show you what that looks like. Just close a few things down here. Let's close that down. Close that down, and let's go and look at our data gen. So this is basically our customer orders and items. And here we're doing a whole bunch of generation into, in effect, our order system. Now, what you'll see is, what you do is now when you create your model, you can come in and you say, well, I'm creating a model just as normal. You fill in whatever you want. And then you can just say, add in other activities, and these could be currently it's messages and other data generations, and then you can also add in general activities. So you might want to have like a sweeper process that copies messages somewhere or does some kind of maybe batch update or invokes some process at the end, and all you would need to do is to add that in. And all you would say is, well, I'm running this particular, I'm creating a model for this activity, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a customer at the same time. So although I've got one activity inside the model, what I'm going to do here is actually add in several. Like I say, that's all going to change. So it's more drag and droppy, a little bit like the stuff that James was showing you before. Now, so if we have a look at this particular model here, so the original model was very similar. So we've picked up all of the enumerations because we know that the order status typically, because we scanned it, has these typical values and has these values. So these are automatically built into the model for you. And here we're publishing an order item. Now, the first thing is that what you might want to do is use the same publish. If we just have a look at what that publish is actually doing, it's basically publishing all of these variables, which we're setting here, like so. But we could also maybe create another order. Again, this publish could have multiple orders being published, but what we're interested in is changing some of the parameters. So in this case, I'm going to use a different salesperson, and in this, I'm going to use another salesperson. Now, if we look at the paths that have been generated, and we take a look through, let's see which one was a good one. So that one's just doing one order item. This one here is actually going to create 3 different orders with 3 different salespeople. Now, why do we care about that? Because one of the queries that the user is interested in is, I'm interested in customers that have more than one salesperson assigned. And all you really have to do is just basically add in 2 extra blocks and just add in separate salespeople to that. So in other words, it's very simple for you. Previously, you might have to do some quite hard logic inside the data generator, whereas now you're just copying and changing one simple parameter like so. Okay. Now, the other one over here is we've got another create a customer. Again, if we look at what that looks like, you'll see that we've got a set of parameters. These are much simpler. Now, if we look over here at the assignment, you'll see here that we're actually looking up a sequence number for customer ID. Now, what that's doing for us here is that we have inside the product, we have this ability to assign sequences. And when you're generating data, you need to worry about to make sure that all the values kind of match. Now, you can do that by having a sequence inside a database, but if you're trying to do a heterogeneous publish, you kind of need to have that outside the technology. And all we're doing here is saying, pick up the customer ID, that's the current value for it. Now, what happens then, let's go back to the model. So here we've got all our various different variables, all our pars that we're dealing with. And if we go to tests and we just run our preview, now preview basically takes all of our, and it's there's kind of a, once you've sort of built your model, what you're really interested in first of all is to make sure that the parameters that we're setting up kind of match. We just go over and just load some more of these. What you'll see here is that you can see that we're changing the values for the customer IDs. These are pulled in from the sequences. Here are some of the variations of the operating profits, etc. Here are some basically regions that we're pulling from some of our random functions or some lists, etc. And that's a good place to start to make sure you've got all of these functions resolving. This particular one here, if we have a look at this activity, what you'll see here, this one is actually creating a set of messages. Now, the thing about these messages, and this most testing now, you will be making requests into reference systems. Now, with this, in effect, what we're doing is we're creating dynamic stubs. So stubs of the old-fashioned method, intelligent stubs, or service virtualization. And what we're able to do here is to create data that matches with the customers. So we're creating our customers. We're setting high values for credits. Like so. Highs and lows values, so we're going to have different types of that. We're also setting current ratings for the companies, and what that means is we're going to create 4 different types of customers with the different responses here. Okay, now if we go and do our generate, there's a few other things that happens here. So all of the generations now, previously there was a whole series of drop downs. That's all going to go away. You're just going to have the one ability to, everything's going to be handled through this one process. A good one is to create all the CSVs beforehand, just to make sure that you set it up correctly. So there's a kind of a logical approach to this to make sure that it all hangs together well. You can also tag things. So here you'll see, sometimes it's really nice down the right hand side to be able to see this path is a corporation, it's a BA1, and it's an LLC. Okay. Now, the other thing you can also do is refresh any lists. If you are connecting to a target system and you maybe want to get a list of active brokers in that system, generally you create a list which is linked to the target system, and all you have to do is just issue a refresh, and that would then, just before the publish runs, it would have an accurate list of the brokers that are available within that system. And then all you do is just click on execute, and that will fire that job off. And I'll just let that back in, run in the background. Now, if we go and have a look at one I created earlier, here you've got a heterogeneous publish, as I call it. So you will see, no, not that, is that the one? Yeah, message data in. No, it's the wrong one. Let's just let this run. Okay, so this is basically chuntering away. It's actually worth having a quick look to kind of see as it's behaving itself in the background. Sorry, let me just do my date modified, make sure I'm picking up the latest ones. Yeah. So what this will do, in 1 second, first thing it's doing is running a preview on the data, which was the thing that we ran before. And oh, there we go, that's the one. So wrong job here, sorry about that. And that basically is creating a set of CSVs. Each one of those CSVs will in effect have a common set of data across all of the different publishers. So that's where you get the matching. You're going to get all of those values match, even though you're publishing into, in this case, 3 different technologies: customer systems in Oracle, the order items in SQL Server, and the messages are then going to go out to Kafka. Okay, so and that's then pushing the data out. If we just have a quick look to see what it's doing, let's just have a glance. So that's just creating our orders. It's worth having a quick look at the log file just to make sure that everything's behaving itself. This is creating our customers. This is creating our orders, I believe. So that's pushing out all the orders. And if we go back and have a look at the job, you'll see there that it's gone off and created the orders. And then if we look at the results of this, you'll see that we've also created those virtual messages. So if we open those, you'll see here we've got a message, the organization ID, which is 55533. That's the request, that's the response. This information here also has been pushed into the backend database system. So it's a much simpler, it's also miles faster. We had a thing called build path before, which took quite a long time. It was doing a lot of processing. So now we skinnied it right down and made it much quicker. And you can generate hundreds of thousands of messages in parallel, sort of heterogeneous way. So let me just quickly summarize that up a little bit. Okay, allows you to create multiple types of data from within models. These could be messages or database data. We're looking to expand that to virtually all of the activities. So you should be able to do subsetting and masking, as well as any of the other activities we come up with. The master variables can use lists to look up reference data. You can refresh the list, so forth. The CSVs before running the for publish to ensure the driving data is correct. So that's a good way of validating that this works. We're trying to make it as kind of debuggable as possible. You're obviously doing some quite complicated things here, so it's a good idea just to make sure that everything looks good before you actually do the final publish. You can choose the order that you want to do things. Quite often you need to post something into a customer system before you can then attach the particular orders to it. So you can choose the order that these publishes go ahead. As I said, it means that the data generation can be a lot simpler. It's kind of easier for us to, you don't have to be a super expert to basically create a set of orders and items. All you're really doing is picking some random products and then maybe totaling up the order items into the order, and that's about it. You don't need to worry about, the suppliers and the customers, etc. And as I said, you can then remove some of the logic up into the model, which is much more visual, and it allows you, I think it's a lot easier from that type of design inside model to create what we call snowflake data. Your job as a tester and a developer is to test as much code as possible in the shortest period of time, and a good way to do that is to create data which has a different shape. So I've got customers and orders with no salesman attached to them. I've got high volume, maybe I've got a supplier that's gone bankrupt. You just want to make sure that all of those characteristics are incorporated in all of your synthetic data generation. Now, here I said you scan it, we run the preview, then you create these CSVs. You just make sure those values are correct. Again, create a CSV to drive the publish or process. And then, as I said, you're creating integrated data across technologies and systems. And internally, we have basically, this is the documentation which kind of shows you what each particular piece is working on in the background there. Okay. And I think that's probably about it. So basically every line in the CSV is in effect doing a publish, but obviously each one of those publishes is independent of each other, but they're reading, they're basically singing from the same hymn sheet. You can see we're processing customer ID 5301 here, okay, because we've linked the two together in the model like so. Okay, Mantis, I think that's me done.
Awesome. Thank you, Huw. Yeah, if you awesome, thank you. Cool. So thank you, Huw. Thank you, James, as well, for presenting. But yeah, we'll now move on to the live Q&A. So please do send your questions into the chat box for Huw and James. But so we already have one question. So the question is, how does the modeler create data in systems that currently require manual interaction or create data that matches rules across various systems? I'm not sure, maybe this one's for you, Huw? Huw, you might be muted.
I'm indeed. Sorry, I was just reading the question again. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of covered a little bit by what I was just showing you. So create data and systems that currently require manual interaction. Okay, so if you think about, because we got the power of Modeler sitting behind us as well, Modeler actually can generate scripts to go and interact with pretty much anything. That could be a Windows system, it could be a mainframe system. What you can do, you could even use the recorders, depending on the technology, is you could actually just, in effect, record a script, which is going to, maybe you want to check, for example, I want to run a small report to look for customers in a particular postcode, and then within that, I want to make sure that they're active. So that's basically what a user does to do their testing. So you just record that interaction, or you create some Selenium script using Modeler, and that would then give you, in effect, think of that as almost a standalone component. You run it, you give it a postcode, it returns you an active customer. And all we would do is just incorporate that as an item on the palette. That would then run every time for the stage where the manual work needs to be done. So we're using the power of the insane amount of automation scripting that we support, and that could even be, interacting against sort of Windows thick client applications as well.
Awesome, thank you, Huw. So Les has a question here, but I can answer this one. So Les was late to joining the webinar, and will it be available on catch-up? And the answer is yes, the webinar is being recorded, and I will send you the recording and slides tomorrow in an email about the same time that this webinar started. The webinar will also be available on our website and YouTube. And okay, so James, we got another question here. This one's for you. Can Test Modeler be used for mobile testing, mobile application testing?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, everything sat behind the model is a different action. As Huw mentioned, it could be mainframe, it could be desktop, it could be an API. We also have an action pack available for mobile automation. And we've also got a corresponding QuickStart tutorial in our learning portal. So maybe Mantis, you could follow up with that after, and I'll just post a link to it in the chat as well. But in short, yes, we do.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Here's another one for you, James. When will we integrate with TestRail, or do we already integrate with TestRail?
Yeah, so that will be available within the next release cycle, so within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Awesome, thank you. Cool. So you also showed off the upcoming Canvas update, which looks really cool. Do you have plans to update any other parts of Test Modeler's UI, UX?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just starting with the modeling canvas because that's kind of the most widely used piece. And obviously we see a lot of benefit there and being able to, expand kind of the canvas size. So, that's kind of the main area of kind of real estate that people are using. But the next step after we've done that will be obviously to go through other parts of the system. And, it's going to be a continuous journey. I think the core bit is, we love your guys' feedback, and that really helps us drive the product direction, but it also helps us drive, the usability and being able to incorporate your feedback, make things more simple, wherever they need to be. So yeah, if anyone has any feedback, we're very eager to work with you and make sure we incorporate that in the product.
Awesome, thank you, James. I've just received a follow-up on the mobile testing question. So Nirmal here is asking, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but he's asking, does Test Modeler integrate with Jira and Qtest from Tricentis?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we have some pretty good tutorials on that. I'm just going to post them in the chat. But yeah, we integrate with lots and lots of DevOps tools, Qtest and Jira, obviously, once we have very, very good support for. But yeah, I'll just post a link to that in the chat, and then maybe you can send that out afterwards as well, Mantas.
Yeah, we'll do. Include them. I'll include those in the email tomorrow. Cool. So, one more question then. Maybe not a question, but you showed off our learning portal and some quick start tutorials. Can you talk more about what's on the learning portal? Maybe about the one-on-ones, the database activities?
Yeah, maybe that's a question for you, Mantas. I mean, this is your baby, right?
Yeah, true. Because so yeah, let me actually just share my screen, and then I can show it off. Cool. So I'm just going to open up our documentation, and hopefully you can see this.
Yes.
Cool. So here's our knowledge base, and we have a learning portal. This is where you want to go if you want to, you really just get started with Test Modeler, really learn how to do different forms of automation, how to build models, how to manage your users, and so forth. All right, so as you can see here, as soon as you open it, you'll be greeted with a range of links, which you can find here on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, of course. But as James mentioned, we already have a range of QuickStart tutorials that you started with building a model for web automation and running that automation. Additionally, we have a whole series of Test Modeler 101 series, which will take you from nothing to running automation, to using generating test, using test data. Really good for beginners, covers a lot in more depth in short videos. And then we additionally have that for test data automation, a 101 series. We have some additional learning, such as the Art of Modeling series, test data strategy series, which are more abstract, more theory-based series that will help you learn more. And finally, we have data activity tutorials. These data activity tutorials, as you can see here, cover a lot of what Huw was talking about today. So scanning databases, using those activities, data validation, analysis, comparisons, and so forth. And again, they will feature one or two short videos that will help you set up the activity and start using it straight away. So yeah, visit.
Just on that one, I think if you look at what's out there for test data, like you go on YouTube, you look for tutorials, you go on Google, there's really not a lot of stuff out there. And I think, what we have here really probably is the best set of tutorials, the best introductory guides for test data, masking, synthetic data generation, scanning, everything else that's basically out there on the internet, right? So I'd strongly recommend people take a look at these tutorials. They're very good for getting a grasp over basic kind of test data concepts, and then obviously going a bit deeper into how you would actually, implement them within the Curiosity platform. So it's definitely worth taking a look at these if you've got some spare time.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, we're always working on more documentation and improving it. So yeah, do check it out. Cool. If I head back now to the slides, cool. Let's see if there's any more stuff come through in the meantime. Cool. I think, I think that's everything for today. So, I'd like to close out and, say thank you to everyone for your questions and to my colleagues for the great presentation. If you'd like to carry on the conversation following our product update, there are a number of ways you can get in touch. All of these links and slides will be shared with you in the follow-up email tomorrow. If you'd like to learn more or still have questions, please get in touch with either James or Huw via email. If you know a colleague who might be interested in our product updates, then share the recording and future updates with them. And finally, please follow Curiosity on LinkedIn and Twitter, or visit our website to stay up to date with our latest updates. Details on the upcoming Q4 product update webinar will be sent out soon. So please do look out for the email announcement there and the email invitation to join that. And yeah, so I think all that remains to be said is a huge thank you for everyone who joined, and a massive thank you to James and Huw for presenting today. See you on our next customer and partner product update. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.